Assalamu alaikum, viewers. I'm glad and excited to come your way once again with Discovering the Light series. This is our maiden edition in 2023. Today, we are going to explore in detail the topic we have entitled Chastity. What is chastity? Chastity is the practice of subduing our indulgence in extramarital sex. Chastity has been defined from the secular perspective. But what does Islam says about chastity? What does the Quran says about chastity? And what are the causes of chastity? What are the effects? And what are the benefits as captured in Quran 24 verse 30, 31. Today is going to be another insightful day with the movie and missionary in charge of the Ahmadiyya Jamaat in Italy. And I welcome you all once again to join us wherever you are with your thoughts, your questions, and your contributions. We'll be glad to attend to them. Movie is available to attend to all your concerns. Beloved, join me once again to welcome Movi Tariq, the missionary in charge of the Ahmadiyya Jamaat in Italy. Movi, once again, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
And you are welcome once again to Discovering the Light series.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Right.
It's an honor to be speaking on such important topics that concern the households of many.
Absolutely. It can't be a better occasion to discuss such an important topic than now because 2023 just started and most people are looking forward to participating in the blessings of 2023. And to achieve such blessings, then chastity must be well taken care of. What is the Islamic perspective of chastity? You can start by telling us what it is. Then we begin to look at the causes, the effect, and also the benefit thereof. So let's start with what it is.
According to Islam, chastity is an instrument to protect the sanctity of a family. And family is highlighted as one of the major cornerstones of every society. If families are protected, everybody speaks of peace, but the first step would be to protect the nucleo familiare, the kern of the society, which is the family. Anything that could destroy the harmony of a family due to excesses of other relationships outside that family or before joining a family or after or within a family, that is a concept that goes against the principal ideas of chastity. So we'll hear many people speaking on peace, speaking on how much they want the world to be a better place, but they want to continue living their lives without any concern for chastity. And what happens is that this weakens the concept of family, and the love and affection that you can find within your family and the larger family slowly diminished, and that vacuum has been sought after by looking for material gains and other physical pleasures, but they can never be exhausted. So chastity is actually to be chaste or not to be chaste. The real question is, how committed are you to develop a peaceful society in the future?
Right. I did a little research on it and realized that it has to do with the conceptions of the mind. If the eyes sees, it processes, and conceptions begins to develop in the mind about going out and indulging in extramarital affairs here and there, then how do we, or how does the Quran teach mankind to subdue that inner edge in us to engage in such abominable act of engaging in extramarital affairs? How do we subdue it from our conceptions?
Hmm. I fully agree that adultery or betrayal does not begin with the act by itself, but begins with the stimuli through the eyes and through other senses that have started and began these thoughts within our hearts and our minds,
Especially with the eyes.
especially with the eyes. The There's a Christian teaching that Jesus is recorded to have said in the Gospels that if you have committed the sin with your eye by committing adultery, then it is better that you take off that eye, so only the eye is punished and not the entire body.
Very
This
interesting.
is this is actually these are the words of Jesus as well.
Right.
But it's very strange that many people who revere Jesus and give him high status do not follow this example. In fact, in the name of liberty, they continue to consider themselves strong believers, but had totally ignore this teaching taught by Jesus. The Holy Quran in chapter 24, Surah An-Nur, in the verses 30, 31,
31.
32, 33, speaks of a topic where he addresses on the topic of chastity first the man and said, Kullil mu'minina, say to the believing men that they should cast their eyes lower, their gaze lower.
Yeah.
And it is a very interesting aspect. And I think for as an experiment, whether you're Muslim or not, just try one day when you go out in the market, in the store, to open your eyes only halfway and then walk on the street, and you see how much suddenly your heart opens up to purity. Obviously, when your eyes are roaming around, like many youngsters, unfortunately, because of the nature they were created and their education and the society, that their eyes are not half gazing down as the instruction of the Quran, but they are wide open up and hunting for these stimuli to look for that some piece of naked body, some piece of
Half naked
half
dress
naked dress,
women
something,
or the
and watch after them. So how will that person not be distracted from more productive things that he could do with his thoughts at that time? Huh? So the Quranic teaching begins first with the men. They tell the people, tell the believing men to cast lower their gaze, you know, it is purer for them. And then it says, tell also to the believing women, you know, before the instruction of the veil, Allah guides them to tell believing women that they also should turn their gaze lower,
lower.
you know. And when you go out, do all the work for women and men that need to be done, all the errands that you have to run, you have to go to work, to bank, to to buy something, everything. But follow this instruction to protect your heart with not letting any wrongful stimuli enter your minds.
Right. I get the understanding and impression from the Quranic verse you just read. Both men and women are cautioned to restrain their look. But maybe we're living in a society where the society we live in has made it extremely impossible, very difficult to restrain our looks. You go out, and both men and women who seek attention from the opposite sex will do all they can to attract your attention. In such circumstance, how do we manage or moderate such situation?
I think the issue is that we should look into the real commitment that the instruction is to believing men, you know? And the real commitment a believing man and woman will have to his faith. And if she or he is not believing, then the real commitment, then instead of going into the plazas and making long demonstrations on peace in this country and that country, showing yourself that how can I attain truly peace within myself to be able to transmit that peace to others. So it is a question of commitment
Commitment.
that one has, either as a believing person to his own spirituality, commitment to the obedience of God Almighty, or if not, then understanding that these impulses that are given by people from different gender to attract and short circuit the the human pleasures without managing them through marriage and understanding why marriage is important. So education and teaching and discussions like this, that will make people pause for a little and see, okay, how I want peace. I want the future leaders of this country to be grown up in a harmonious and peaceful family where mother is respected by the father and father is respected by my mother, and they grow up to become good leaders who understands the dynamics of the society and the importance of commitment to loyalty and peace.
Right.
You
Will
cannot,
you?
sorry, you cannot have it both ways.
Right.
You cannot live a life of full freedom going against the rights. And some women may disagree and say that chastity for me is not a right, but it is a burden on me. God forbid. Or for a man, it is a burden for me. But when you look at it, you know, the society, the way you have described it, and unfortunately we see in many countries, is has developed to be as such that women have no negotiating hands with men anymore. A man, without committing to marriage, can take all the pleasures from a woman. And if a woman wants to stand up and say that no, before you have the pleasures, before we join and have this relationship, you must promise me to give me all the rights of any consequences that could occur from this relationship: birth of child, emotional
Support.
support, and all these things. But women don't have this negotiating hand anymore. No, because if a man would say it is in the interest of man the salvage, the biological man, that is nurtured in the society, to continue whatever he's doing and never being forced to commit to marriage.
But are women in Islam permitted to negotiate details of what you just explained with their men before agreeing to marry them, even in the first place?
The whole marriage is in effect just a contract. But what is marriage when you look at marriage? Marriage is a contract that there is a biological imbalance, natural imbalance in the relationship between man and woman.
Some describe it as imperfect, two imperfect individuals coming together to live as one.
Yeah, they're both imperfect. That's the emotional balance. What I'm talking about is from the biological aspect and also from economical aspect. There's an imbalance in the relationship between man and woman. Because what happens? Man, from a biological point of view, he does not have a biological clock that is ticking against him. He has, up to the end of his life, the capacity to progenerate and to have children. Whereas women, they have a biological limitation that after a certain age, they cannot bear any children. It is very natural for human beings, as in a sane society, the desire to have children. But what happens is that when a child is born, there is extremely more biological burden, as we know, and we cannot negate, on the woman. And besides that, there is an extremely emotional burden, and I wouldn't say burden, but commitment that the woman has put into the raising of the child. Man can just run away, and many do. Or a solution would be, God forbid, abortion of the child. But many don't discuss actually the medical facts that aborting a child or giving birth to a child both concur with a heavy emotional pressure on the woman. Women who abort their children, they go through different phases of depression because they had a life inside them and they had to kill it. No matter how much they love their careers and they stand behind that decision, they do have to pay a very heavy emotional toll. So marriage, what is marriage? Marriage is that woman which is at a slight disadvantage. There's a slight imbalance. Because man can say to the woman, just have this relationship and yeah, I promise, I will take care of you. I love you, and say all the sweet talks. But the moment the child is born, he finds somebody else and runs away. Huh? And if she never got married, there is no pressure from the society on that man to behave in a dignified manner.
Right.
And this will just create more frustration. Marriages that in front of the society, the man commits that this woman, from today on, everything this woman will have, and any consequences that would occur from our relationship, I will take care of her. And if I will not take care of her, the whole society will call me to account of it.
Right. Do you perceive deficiency in our claim to faith? Because a faithful Muslim, for example, is one that is supposed to have submitted his will totally to God. And once that will is totally submitted to God, it springs out decency. And decency includes subduing our indulgence in some of these extramarital affairs, being faithful to our partners, and keeping the nuclear family right like you have explained, where our faith, that is submitting your will totally to God, is faulty, do you perceive that it is the faulty nature of our faith that has resulted in some of these things in the Islamic circle?
Uh, I don't think it is the faulty nature of the faith. Huh? We must distinguish very clearly that the human soul or the human thought is like a wild horse. And faith teaches us to control and guide those sentiments. Not like in some other religions, where, for example, in some groups of Buddhism, it is preached that you should kill all your desires.
Desires.
But Islam teaches you should have a balance, because the desires, they are made from God.
God.
They're put and they have a thing,
And you need them for your marriage.
and we need them for our marriage. But what God told us, that you should reign in these desires. You should be in control of these desires. The desires should not be in control of Islam.
Okay.
So that's why I said that faith as itself has given us very beautiful teachings, you know. And it's not, chastity does not begin with these things. They are, in a way, when you tell me that look in the Quran and tell me the one verse on chastity, I will have to present you 100 of verses, because chastity begins at the etiquettes of how you enter even your friends' houses, how you knock and ask permission, you know, how at certain times of the day you don't go to other people's houses,
Yeah.
you know, how when you meet, you go 5 times a day in the mosque to clean up yourself. The entire society is based to protect yourself, to let your emotions and your desires
Be moderated.
be moderated or directed
Directed.
into
Yes.
the right direction.
Right.
But then, if it's a horse is a horse, and if you cannot control it,
It
then
bolts off.
it goes off.
Right. Beloved, you are tuning to the Discovery Light series. Today, we are at San Pietro Casale at Bologna, trying to discover more from the teachings of the Holy Quran from the movie and missionary in charge of the Ahmadiyya Jamaat in Italy. We have looked at chastity. We have looked at the causes in detail. We now want to explore further by looking at some of the effects. If we fail to be chaste, what are some of the consequences that the family, the nuclear family, the extended family, and the society at large is bound to face? So if you have just tuned in or you have just joined us, welcome to our discussion. Maybe we have looked at the causes in great detail. Now I want us to explore a little bit on the effects. Every choice we make comes with consequences. If you make a good choice, you are a beneficiary of a good outcome. If you make a wrong choice, you surely inflict upon yourself consequences thereof. If we fail to be chaste, what are some of the prescribed consequences in the Holy Quran for the human family?
The Quran, when it speaks on the indication of chastity in different verses, in Surah Al-Azab, also in Surah 33, chapter 33, around the verses 40 to 45. There's an entire interesting discussion, chapter 32 also, on this topic. It speaks of one that it says it is purer for you.
Mm.
You know, what does purity mean?
Purity.
Purity mean a life which is without drama, a life which is uncomplicated,
Mm.
you know, a life where you don't live with regrets and the psychological pressure to be caught.
Mm.
That is purity.
Right.
You know, you can find peace when your heart is at ease.
Mm.
That is one thing. Another interesting aspect is that the Quran speaks of the chastity and uses the word, the consequence of not respecting chastity is fahsha, which is indecency and
Mm.
immorality.
Immorality.
So there is a lack of peace and there's a lack of morality. But what type of morality?
Mm.
And here I would argue, looking at the consequences,
Mm.
all types of morality. Because a child which is born unto an unchaste family, it will only be by a special intervention of God
God.
that this child would understand the inner workings of a moral behavior. Otherwise, the father is occupied and busy hunting left and right,
Mm.
and the woman and the mother is struggling to raise their child,
Mm.
and she's also occupied and busy in finding someone to give her more emotional support.
Support.
And she will falter because in a society where chastity is not of concern,
Mm.
you know, men will come. Maybe there are a few who will behave properly,
Mm.
but many men will come with the thought behind, okay, she is an easy to get target. She is vulnerable. All she needs is some attention, and I will get what I want. And that's it. So, what happens is that in that society, when the family has broken apart, their child, if it's in a society, if it's one case of hundreds,
Mm.
then it's something repairable. But if it is the larger majority
Mm.
of children growing up like this,
Mm.
the father tells the child, son, you're not behaving well, you should study. But because the mother is in war with the father, to win the child's favor, she would tell them, oh, your father is so strict, just play, love, I love you, son.
Mm.
Huh? Then the mother says that I have no money, I cannot buy you a toy
Mm.
because we have to buy food.
Mm.
And then the father will come to the child and say that no, 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 just this money I'm sending you to you is not for your food.
Feeding.
No, you can just buy junk food and have more toys. Huh? So the child will win favor of a father and will never understand what good nutrition is. And this is happening.
Yeah.
It's not
Divided family
this is
as a
not
consequence.
something remote or philosophical that we're talking about.
Mm.
When you go in the field
Mm.
and talk to people, talk to children, talk to their parents,
Mm.
you know, how they have totally disregarded the sanctity of family for their own desires, for their own thing, where children are stuck in between and their studies are affected by it,
Mm.
their behaviors are affected by it. And if it's a larger majority of society, especially in a democratic society, you know,
Mm.
what type of people will they elect as the leaders?
Mm.
You know, those who are taught from their very childhood that just follow your desires. You can do whatever you want. This is good. This is your morality.
Mm.
Just do whatever you need, even at the cost of the others. And when you look at this, the wars that now the world is suffering from
Yes. Yes.
are based on leaders and the people who do not look at the consequences of the larger society, but they are educated in a way that they believe it is right to do whatever your desires tell you to do.
Right. I was, like I said, I did a little research on the topic and then discovered yesterday, to my shocking, that the second most dangerous cause of infidelity, the second most dangerous cause of divorce all over the world today is infidelity. So it ties into what you just said. We have discussed a lot about the consequences, and I know the opposite of the consequences is definitely going to be the benefits of being chaste. So I want us to look briefly at veil, the veil that the Muslim girls wear. But even before I come back to the veil, let me remind us that the consequences movie talked about is like a double-edged sword. It cuts both the men and the women. The family suffers, the society suffers, and the world suffers at large. So I'm tying it in also with the veil, which to a large extent talks about modesty of dressing from our women. Then the gaze that we talked about, if they are properly dressed, the eye will see very little. The mind will process nothing of a negative thought, and our naturalness will be attained. So begin to explain a little for us, what is veil and why do Muslim girls wear veil?
Hmm. That is actually today, looking at the news and the situation in some countries like Iran, a very controversial topic, you know, because although the Quran teaches us to wear the veil, but to which extent? To the extent that women who do not wear their veil, they are allowed to be tortured and killed by the police of a country? God forbid, never so. That goes against another very clear Quranic teaching in chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 256, where Allah very clearly says that there should be no compulsion in matters of religion. The veil should be something out of conviction. The veil is actually not just like a door to a woman that she will not commit indecency, but the veil is more like a uniform, because the Quran speaks in chapter 32 of the veil in verses around 40, 30, and 43 and these things, that this is so that you be recognized and not be molested. What is it? It is that a woman who's wearing a veil, but she is walking in such a manner as to attract the attention of men around it, she is not wearing the veil that Islam told her to. A woman that she walks in a decent manner, does the things that she has to do with full concentration, her veil is an indicator like that of a police officer, that don't do stupid things in front of my eyes. I will not condone that. I will not like when you whistle after me. I will not like if, God forbid, you touch me without my permission or consent. And that was a very important sign in this early society of Islam. Nowadays, and this is also a very controversial topic, in the last years, there has been a campaign which was the Me Too campaign, which spoke of many women in Western society, very important actors and actresses in Western society, and powerful and rich women, who came out and said that in one time of our life we have been indecently touched
Touched.
or molested by our colleagues,
Yes.
but we were afraid, we were ashamed
To speak out.
to speak up. The problem was that there was no legal protection for them. What happened is that then they amended it. They said, okay, there's no legal protection because there's no proof. You know? So then they amended and said, okay, when we find 3, 2, 5, 10, 15 women who have been victims
And testifies
and
against you.
testify, then this could cause maybe to a condemnation by a jury or legislation. And that something happened that there were a lot of smear campaigns about academics and professors in university whom just happened to not be liked by many women, and they made this case. They went to jail, and later on had been found after 10 years or 5, 6, 7 years in jail that actually all this case was a lie. So there is a judicial dilemma in regard to protecting women. That is why in the veil there is another entire philosophy behind it, that you should avoid such situations where man can do something with you without your consent and you wouldn't have any proof for it. Don't be alone with a stranger man. Always have somebody around you. Have your sister with you, have your husband with you, have your brother with you, or have somebody with you. If you have to meet some man, you can meet him. Do it in public.
Which means women are cautioned to be mindful of their association,
They're cautioned to protect themselves.
to protect themselves.
Otherwise, look how much talent among the women we have lost due to this emotional pressure they have, to hide something that they can never prove, but they have been victims of. So what is the legislation? What is the reply? And up to now, all these societies have not found a solution. The solution, Me Too, was not a solution. In a way, there was actually a referendum where it is asked that when the Me Too started, that they asked men who have behaved decently all their lives, how much afraid are they that they could be targeted also innocently by a Me Too campaign? And a lot of men raised their hands and said that we cannot even have a proper conversation with any woman anymore.
Right. Beloved, you are tuning to Discovering the Light series, and we are here with our guest, Movi Tariq, the missionary in charge of the Ahmadiyya Jamaat in Italy. We have covered extensively the issue of chastity. We have looked at the causes, we have looked at the effects, and we've looked at the benefits thereof for those who chaste or those who embrace chastity. We are also discussing the veil, the veil that the Quran admonishes women to wear to disguise or to restrict themselves from showing their sensitive parts to the public. Those sensitive parts are supposed to be only for their husbands and should not be made public. This is what we are discussing now. We will go for a short commercial break. We will come back and continue to look at the effects of not wearing the veil. Welcome back, viewers, to Discovering the Light series. We are here with the Movi, the missionary in charge of the Ahmadiyya Jamaat in Italy. We are continuing our exploration on the veil that the Muslim girls wear. I want to find out from Movi if it is compulsory or it is discretionary to wear the veil. Is it compulsory for the Muslim girl to wear the veil?
It is, that's a very tricky question. In a way that is it compulsory to say your 5 daily prayers? It is.
It is.
If you don't, do you get punished in this world? No. Is there any punishment for that?
No.
Is it compulsory to read the Holy Quran regularly? Yes. But if you don't, is there any worldly punishment for it? No,
No.
it's your own loss.
Yes.
The same in matters of spirituality, when it speaks of a compulsory, it cannot be confused by what other some so-called Islamic regimes do. It is compulsory because it is a commandment of God.
God.
But does it mean that in executing this commandment of God, I have the right to torture you if you don't do this? No,
No.
that's not true. So that's said that it is compulsory. A Muslim woman dedicated to her faith should study and learn her faith. And by learning and studying her faith with a pure heart, she will understand that God desires from her that she should wear modestly and cover her hair, cover her head, and cover herself and behave appropriately in society. If she doesn't, the Muslim community can remind her and explain to her, but in the end, it's her choice. So, a woman, a Muslim woman, not wearing a veil cannot say it is, I'm not wearing it because it's not compulsory. But she can say that it is compulsory, but I'm not yet fully convinced. I'm not fully committed. And then if she wants to work on it, she can work on her commitment and gradually progress in that sphere.
Yeah, I wanted us to wrap up on this, but a question just popped up on my mind because earlier on, you give the scenario or the logic of the police. If a woman behaves like wears the veil, but behaves in the opposite way to wearing the veil, you wear the veil but still act with the evil intent. It, it shows like, or it comes up like you are not wearing the veil at all. It brings me to the question I want to ask now, that can someone not wear the veil yet practice in a decent manner her way of life, the way she walks, the way she dresses, the way she speaks, the way she doesn't go out with the motive of attracting male's attention to them? Can is it acceptable in Islam?
You know, the, there's a gray zone. You know, the gray zone is that it is acceptable not in a way because the veil is a commandment, a clear commandment of God.
Commandment.
Okay?
Right.
That would be better than nothing. You know, will she be rewarded for it? Allah knows best. Will she be punished by Allah for not wearing the veil, although she knew and believes that she has to? That is a decision with Allah. You know, Allah can forgive whom He wills, but will never be unjust. The matter is not that it is in a way the woman's fault always to attract man's attention. But sometimes a woman also without any clothes walks and does her way, you know, wearing a t-shirt and wearing shorts, and she does not have this intention to attract man's attention, but it still does.
It's still,
Huh? That is the importance of the way.
yeah.
You know, if she can act and walk modestly, then how will you define modesty?
Right.
You know, when today you say modesty will be wearing full sleeve shirts, but in the summer they said I can wear a t-shirt
T-shirt.
and I will be full sleeve, and then the next day she can come that I'm modest, I have no bad thoughts, and I will be without sleeves.
Absolutely.
So where do you draw the line? In human civilization, what we have seen so far, man and woman evolved from less clothes to full clothes. The main example, for example, if you want to see among Christians also, a major sign, the major success of a very spiritual woman is that of Mary. Was she covering her head? Yes, she was. You know, and she was a sign and a model of modesty and moral behavior. So that is the thing, that a veil does not intervene with your day-to-day activities, unless, of course, in Western society, that's that's the irony of it. In unless, of course, in Western society, a woman with a veil is more discriminated by her employer,
Yes.
by her mayor in Sindako and politicians,
Yes.
and by her professors in school. You know, so the problem then is not the veil, but the problem is the discrimination of men. In a way, the leaders in